everyone. Welcome back to Chapter by Chapter with my BFF, Scott McClellan. We decided to change it up a little bit and not do a live stream, and we're just going to record. So if you guys enjoy this new setup that we have going on, let us know and enjoy our conversation. Put a tweet out asking our listeners for some questions about Dune. And we got a few questions. The first one comes from our buddy Ben. What's up, Ben?
Hey, Ben.
Do you think the director of Dune will use a different character like Chani as the centerpiece of the story just to switch things up instead of making Paul the central focus? Well, since I don't really know who that character is, I'll let you take the floor.
The problem with a question like that is
it's everything. Thanks, Ben.
no, Ben. No. Here's the thing. Because I know where the story goes,
yeah,
both in this book and in future books in the series that Frank Herbert wrote, I would say doing something like that jeopardizes where the story is going and thematically what was the message and the point Frank Herbert was trying to make. So if he did it, it would definitely be one of those kind of changes that make people like me who like look at book to movie adaptations, that would be one of those things that you might end up with, pitchforks and torches. If you did something terribly that would be a terribly drastic change for where the story needs to go.
Okay. I guess that I have a question to follow up with that. Is there Dune is such like a heavy, there's so much information in here. Is there anything that like you would be okay with if they made changes to the story, or do you want it to be like just like the book?
No, it can't be just like the book. I mean, there are long portions of exposition. The movie's not going to have that. The movie's going to keep it moving. There's a chapter we're going to be talking about tonight. No, we can cut to the chase in literally a fraction of the time. That's what adaptation is. I mean, I can accept that, but for me, adaptation is I still want you to stay true to the character's arc, the character's personality. I want the story to pretty much follow the gist. But I've already seen in the last trailer that we got, the trailer that released in between since our last stream, there's differences in the trailer. Like, I mean, we see Duncan in that trailer. Literally, we don't meet Duncan until, the
chapter 12.
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, but that makes sense because you want in a movie, and you've got Jason Momoa cast in the role, you want to establish that relationship. You actually want to show the relationship instead of what the book does, which is kind of tell you a little bit about Duncan and hint at it. Like, that's the stuff that books can do. Movies, you've got to actually like show us that. And so those are the kind of adaptation changes that doesn't bother me because it's what makes a good movie versus what makes a good book.
Well, I think Zendaya said in an interview recently that she's actually not in Dune that much. Like her filming only took like a day, I think is what she said. 4 days, sorry. Yeah,
4
it took
days, yeah.
4 days. So and you've read the book before, so you kind of know how much she's probably going to be in this one.
I have my theories about
Yeah.
where the movie is going to stop. Like, as soon as I heard that Dune was going to be broken up into 2 movies,
Hmm.
and recent comments by Villeneuve has confirmed, yes, we're only getting half the book in this movie.
Hmm.
In my mind, I have a general area that I feel like, based on what I've been thinking this entire time, and now it's been confirmed, no, they're not trying to cram the entire book into one movie. Thank God.
Yes.
Um, see 1984 for what that does to the movie. Um, uh, I have an idea where the movie is going to stop, or at
Hmm.
least a range of where I think it's going to stop. And unfortunately, as Meg and I talked about before we started streaming, I can't say that because spoilers. you know.
Yeah. And I just sent him the Batfleck gif of I believe you. So that's our behind the scenes conversations. So yeah, I personally, for me, I guess, like you said, they're showing like these big stars in the trailer, probably to just, obviously to attract a certain audience. If you show Zendaya in a trailer, her fans are going to show up.
You show
So yeah,
Momoa in a trailer, his fans are going to show like
Timothy Chalamet.
exactly.
Here's the thing: I had no idea what the hell Dune was even about. But I saw Timothy Chalamet, Jason Momoa, Oscar Isaac, Rebecca Ferguson, and I was like, okay, I'm there. Don't know what it's about, but I'm there. And now look at us.
Yeah.
So
You've
yeah,
bought the book, you've bought the audio book, you're streaming about it. Like literally, they
I have
did
the
their
props,
job.
the figures, everything.
Like they did their job. Like
Yeah, they did.
I mean, they brought you in. Like
Yeah,
join us, Meg.
yeah.
Join
It's
us.
almost like my own personal brand of spice.
Yes.
How meta is that? Okay. So thank you, Ben, for that question. We're gonna go to Bob's question. Question: with Dune coming out in October, it's a packed month. Will people be going to see Dune? I know Halloween Kills is mostly what's on people's must see in October. What do you think? I mean, I'm going to see Dune.
I'm going to
October
see
is going to be such a packed month for me that it's fine though. I'm excited. I'm glad that movies are coming out again.
except for the ones that are already being delayed again. That's
Yeah, but not Dune.
no, because of the HBO Max day and date. Like
Yeah.
that is what's guaranteed Warner Brothers release dates because
Hmm.
they kind of don't. It's almost like they don't care what the box office is.
Which is interesting, and that's a whole nother conversation. But yeah,
Yes,
I agree. I think with the same day going to HBO Max, I think that's just cementing that Dune is still. I mean, obviously it's still out in October, unless they are going to change it last minute.
no, I think they're committed to this point. Like look at this. No Warner Brothers movie has changed dates at this point
Nope. Yeah, not since
because
they did the day streaming, right?
yeah, exactly. And is I I do honestly believe that Dune is not going to do well at the box office.
Oh yeah,
I've
same,
never thought Dune was going to do well at the box office because I lived through Blade Runner 2049
same.
and that movie was spectacular.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It was amazing and it was the most spectacular movie that nobody went to go see.
Yeah, I remember. I think I saw it like a few weeks after it came out because people were like, I remember seeing people say how bad it was, or like not how bad, but like how little money it was making. And so I was like, oh, I'm gonna go check this out. Blown away. So I agree with you. I think that's going to be the same reception
It's
to
going to be
Dune.
an incredible movie that nobody watches.
Yep.
And but HBO Max is going to give an opportunity for more people to put eyes on it because there's just something psychological about I'm sitting at home on my TV and I could just click play. People will willingly click play on just about anything on a
Yeah.
streaming service, no matter what. I'm guilty of that. There are
Same.
movies that I will click play on a streaming service that I would never get my butt to the theater to see. Now, Dune, I'm buying my dad a ticket. I'm buying me a ticket. We're seeing that puppy in IMAX. I'm like, give me the big ass screen, give me the sound, give me everything.
Everything.
My dad and I are huge Dune fans. This is literally going to be the first movie my dad and I go see in a theater together since Ford versus Ferrari.
Oh, wow.
And we saw that in IMAX together. So like they're just these movies that like I'm ready to take my dad to go see a movie again.
Yeah, and what a movie too. I mean, this is going to be, like you said, there's a trailer that came out between our last stream, and how amazing was that? I mean, I'm just blown away by the trailers. I can't even imagine how it's going to be when we actually see the movie. I mean, it literally looks like they filmed it in space.
Yes. Yeah. And credit to Villeneuve. I mean, with Arrival and Blade Runner 2049, after I saw those two, I mean, literally, by the time I was watching Blade Runner 2049 on opening weekend, it had already been announced he was doing Dune. So I'm watching Blade Runner 2049 going, Dune is going to be incredible. So it's going to be one of those things that you're going to see on social media. People are going to be doing whatever reactions or whatever narrative they want to spin. This is not going to do well at the box office. It just isn't. It is a highbrow sci-fi novel from the 60s that modern day audiences somehow don't know what it's about. And I'm sitting here going, the fucking book's been around since 1965. But the star power is what they're trying to use to bring people in. So we'll see how it goes. I just don't think it's going to do well.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to do well either. But I'm going to be there as close to opening night as possible. I'm going to see it hopefully the weekend of. And yeah, I'm going to go see Halloween Kills too because it's Halloween. So. And our last question is a bit of a funny question from Ankit. I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. He says, when will be the right time to write a Jason Momoa / Oscar Isaac fanfic? Thank you. Whenever? Right now. I would read that. Especially after our discussion.
Yeah, going into tonight's discussion, I gotta say something about this. We picked a great chunk of
We
chapters.
always do. It's so weird.
It's so weird. Like the one time we decided to change it to a 4-chapter chunk, it's like because this suddenly became like the Duke Leto show.
Yeah, because I mean, if you've been here with me, obviously, when we've been talking about this. That
have I really? Really?
Yeah, I think so. You're Scott, right?
I think so.
I used to feel a certain type of way about the Duke here, and it's quickly changing. I'm seeing a lot more, obviously, more of his personality, and just the way that like he commands a room and gets respect from the people around him. I feel like, and he has some very sweet moments with Paul in these next few chapters where I'm like, okay, maybe I judged a little too harshly.
And I tried to warn you about
you
that.
did. You did. Sorry, Oscar Isaac, if you're listening to this.
Well, I think the point is that the book started off intentionally introducing you to Lady Jessica, and Lady Jessica gets incredibly well developed over those first several chapters. It was almost like Frank Herbert wanted you to develop a sense of Duke Leto with Duke Leto absent.
Yeah, I agree. Because I mean, well, and we were seeing the Duke from like her perspective, so like we were getting her emotions about him and thoughts about him, and it's like, it puts a certain image in your head where you're like, okay, when's this guy going to show up so I can really give him the once over? And he's here. So yeah, we can start out. This is going to be chapter 11, which is a pretty short chapter, but it takes place right after Paul has an assassination attempt, and the Duke finds out, and you could say he's a little upset.
Yeah, this chapter humanizes him
Mm-hmm.
so much because if I remember correctly, this is the chapter that repeatedly throughout, all you hear the Duke saying to himself is, "They have tried to take the life of my son," and
Mm-hmm.
it's this mantra, like he is in this quiet rage the
Mm-hmm.
entire chapter because it's like that thing of you don't mess with family.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, there's like several times in the chapter where like so like at the beginning he's so furious about like this assassination attempt. Then Gurney shows up and then they have a discussion and then he thinks about it again and then he thinks about it again towards like the end of the chapter, I think, about like how could they do this, or like my son was almost like ripped from me. And it also I feel like there's a little like he kind of knows like maybe his time is coming to an end a little bit, so having something like his son taken away from him just puts like his whole house in jeopardy.
Well, he knows that Paul is
Yeah.
like the future of Atreides. Like
Yeah.
he knows that.
Mm-hmm.
And but he's also, I mean, these next few chapters is basically us understanding, I mean, what the situation is like for House Atreides to take over the spice production on
Yeah.
Arrakis.
Yeah, and it's not good.
It's not good. And once again, it just reinforces the fact that Leto and his lieutenants, they know they were set up to fail. Like,
Yes.
and that's the biggest thing is the underdog quality you get about this house in
Mm-hmm.
these chapters is, wow, the Harkonnens are pieces of crap. But you also realize how even the emperor is in on it, and they know
Yeah.
he's in on it. And basically it's just about them trying to figure out how are we going to make lemonade out of lemons.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's in, I think it's in chapter 12, but
Everything's in chapter 12. What are you
yeah,
talking about?
yeah. There's like a specific line that the Duke says about other houses not like heeding the call. It's because they got fat from like their like the riches that they were getting in from like, or like they don't want to put themselves in a position that would take away what's making them, I'm doing air quotes, fat. Um but yeah, no. So okay, let's focus on chapter 11 because I love these little like human moments, like you said. Um, I particularly like how the Duke is like reminiscing about his like own happiness and how like he knows that he's not really going to be happy on Arrakis the way he
Yes.
was in Caladan. But he's like willing to suffer through it to like to make it so this can be a home for Paul.
Yeah, this was the quote. This was my one, like, of all the chapters we read, I really didn't highlight that much.
Neither.
But I highlighted this in chapter 11. And this is the Duke thinking to himself. And he says, I must mask my feelings, he thought, for the boy's sake. If he's ever to have a home, this must be it. I may think of Arrakis as a hell I've reached before death, but he must find here that which will inspire him. There must be something.
Yes.
And dear God, if that is not like a treatise on a father's wish for a son,
Yeah.
like that is, it's like, I will go through hell
Mhm.
so you can have a better life. It's
Yes.
so, it's almost so Campbellian. It's almost, it's mythological in the sense of it repeats itself. That whole idea of the father sacrifices so that the son could have something better.
Yeah, yeah, no, I can't wait to see that scene, like,
Oh, because
with the
Oscar Isaac's
performance.
gonna
Oh, he's
act
gonna
the
kill it.
hell
He's
out
gonna
of
kill it. Because I actually didn't physically read the book these last few chapters. I was listening to the audiobook. And what I really enjoy about the audiobook is that I it gives you it's just like another level to understanding like some of these lines. And like, because in my head when I'm reading, it's not like I'm acting out the lines, you know. So when with the audiobook, they're like acting out these lines, and it gives you so much more emotion and weight to some of these scenes. And that one, and the scene where he's talking with Paul about the assassination, and he like touches his hand. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, that's just so precious.
Because you've already gotten a sense, especially in this last trailer, about how Oscar Isaac and Timothy Chalamet are going to portray this relationship,
Mm-hmm.
and it I would dare say it almost feels like it's going to be even warmer than what we've even seen so far in the book.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah, because the whole time I was listening and taking notes, I was just thinking about how like that scene in the trailer is just such like a personification, literally a personification of like that scene. Because I'm like, holy shit, like I just can't wait to see them like interacting with each other in like actual live action. Like, because I have this image in my head of how these scenes are gonna go. But yeah, that just that slight touch that he does with his hand, just to like show him like I'm here, I'm your dad, you're alive, we'll figure this out type thing.
Mm-hmm.
So good.
What I thought was interesting also in chapter 11 is
Mm-hmm.
you really do start to see what an amazing leader the Duke is.
Mm-hmm.
And almost in sort of a political manipulative sense. And I don't mean I know that manipulative has a very negative connotation, but he
Persuasive, maybe.
well, no, I mean manipulative in that he realizes the situation he's in, and by
Mm.
golly, we've got to do whatever we can to make
Yeah.
this work. Because, like in chapter 11, he talks to Gurney, and he's like, "Gurney, one, I need your best guys.
Mm-hmm.
Send them with Howard because crap's going down. Like,
Yeah.
we need your help there. Now, I also need you to go find all of these tradesmen,
Mm-hmm.
all these people who know what they're doing when it comes to spice production. And I need you to convince them to not leave. Like their contract is up. They got
Yeah.
money in their pocket. They're
Oh,
on a
out.
shuttle. They're
New
ready to get,
boss, I'm out.
yeah. And now it's like negotiate, promise up to a point, whatever
Yeah.
you can. We need the experience. We do not need to be starting from zero.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, it's just so how forward thinking the Duke is. Like the Duke knows the situation he's in. And
Mm-hmm.
this is like day one. Like remember, I think we're still like in the first day of them being on Iraq. It's like a lot has happened and
Yeah.
we're only on day one. And the Duke is already like working it. Like he
Mm-hmm.
knows he's on a clock to make sure that this just doesn't crash and burn at the very beginning of them taking over on Arrakis.
Yeah, and it just goes to show you how like Gurney is such a like great right hand man too. Like he just gets off the shuttle, he just shows up, and it's like, all right, I need you to do this, 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 and this. And he's like, all right, I'm down. What do I need to do? Can I do this? Oh, within a budget? Okay, I got you. Let's do this. Um, yeah, but like Gurney is just, and again, perfect casting. When I'm listening and reading about Gurney, I'm like, oh, dude, this is
Josh Brolin.
perfect. Yeah. Oh, and even the guy that does his lines in the audiobook sounds very similar-ish to Josh Brolin, like not as raspy,
Right.
but I'm like, it gives you an idea. And I obviously I can just picture him and Oscar Isaac having this conversation on the side. And yeah, I loved because this is like the first time we see Gurney, right? Or it's
No,
not the first scene. We saw him with Paul.
right, because they were doing
Yeah.
the blade training,
Yeah.
you know. But I just love how these chapters also reinforce this idea of Gurney as like this warrior poet. Like,
Oh, I know. He just like brings up these quotes that are just like, oh, okay. Just so
it,
inspirational.
or just so perfect. Like, dude,
Yeah.
you've got a quote for everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I did love that too, and I put that in my notes. I was like, make sure to bring up his one-liners.
I know, but they're not one-liners like in
Yeah.
a jokey sense.
Not
They're
yeah,
more
not
like
bad. Yeah.
right. But it's just amazing to think that this guy's like a badass. You know,
Mhm.
he's a soldier, but yet he is so well read. I love the fact that when he drops his bag, he still holds on to like his like loot. Like
Yeah.
I almost think about like the rooster in Robin Hood is like your
Mhm.
you know, it's like he holds onto his musical instrument. Like
Yeah.
he's just this weird like renaissance man.
I love it.
And it makes Gurney such a endearing character.
Mhm. And he's just so ride or die for the Duke, and I just love it. Like he's down for whatever, even just by like this first like small interaction where it's like I feel like anybody else would kind of be a little overwhelmed by, all right, you show up and I have all of this stuff for you already to do. And it's like, I don't even, has the Duke even like addressed the people of Arrakis yet?
They have because that which is weird because we get that in the princess's little meta text at the
Oh, yeah.
beginning, because that is where
Where they call Paul
uh
the Muad'Dib or whatever.
yeah, I think that oh, at least it's translated only as Mahid, and it's the
Yeah.
beginning of the idea that oh, they see Paul as this prophet savior, like,
Yeah.
but remember that's also part of what the Bene Gesserit planned, because remember they dropped those
Hmm.
little monomyths all around the universe so
Yeah.
that wherever they go, like they're set. You know, we had that whole conversation with Jessica back in our last stream, and I love it how the Duke and his squad is like trying to figure out like what's up with this, like
Yeah.
and but then also looking at Paul going, and how can we use this to our advantage?
Exactly. That's what I really love about this book is that like and you mentioned it in one of our first streams about how like the reader already knows like the context of certain things and it's like you're reading it and these characters don't know the context of these things and you just want to like scream at them be like yo it's right here like this is the context um but yeah, something interesting that I wrote in my notes for this chapter was the Duke talks about a propaganda man.
Yes. Yeah, he has his
Uh,
own like but once again, that kind of goes into me talking about him being this leader,
yeah,
but he knows he has to play the game.
yeah,
And so
yeah,
he's got a propaganda ministry.
hmm yeah. Which it's so interesting. Like the Duke, he just gets more and more interesting to me because in chapter 12, he does something to the man, how do you say it? Harkonnen?
Harkonnen is technically how remember,
Hark.
we've always got
Okay,
to deal with the
yeah,
fact that
I know.
Harkonnen is how Herbert
Harkonnen.
pronounced it. Harkonnen is how everyone else wants to pronounce it.
Okay, Harkonnen or Harkonnen, those guys that he finds, and he like makes a decision with what to do with them. That even Paul was like questioning, like maybe the morality of it, and it's like, okay, so like I feel like the Duke just like makes these decisions. Like he's like, this is what I'm gonna do. This is how I want to be perceived in a certain situation. So this is how I'm gonna do it. Um, but yeah, the propaganda, I was like, of course you have a propaganda man. That is so cool.
But it's
So
almost like
cool.
but then normally because when we hear the idea of propaganda, that obviously comes with very negative
Yes.
connotations. I mean, because we think of things like the Nazi regime and how you
Yes.
had like Goering and like that was his whole job
Yeah. Propaganda, yeah.
was to propaganda. And I almost feel like Herbert knows that. Like
Yes.
he's not shying away. Like he's not making this a good thing. He's
Hmm.
not trying to paint any of these people as these black hats or white hats, except for me, the Harkonnens. Like, no, they're just evil sons of bitches.
Yeah, they're just bad.
They're just bad. But even our quote heroes are doing some morally gray stuff. And
Yeah.
and Herbert's not shying away from that in the book.
No, not at all. Um in my notes I put uh the Duke talks to his propaganda man, then thinks about Paul's life being threatened. The end of that chapter.
I know, because it's just kind of like
It was pretty short, but like you said, I really enjoyed the humanizing that they did with him in that chapter. Well, didn't Lady Jessica also like recall like her life on Caladan in the previous chapter to this, or maybe the one before that?
It was the one before that,
Uh,
because the idea is always it's that juxtaposition of
Yeah,
what life was like at home
yeah, yeah.
versus now we're on this desert wasteland of a planet.
Yeah, I just like how they both had that like that those thoughts so close in the story at least. Um about like recalling their old life and how, oh well, that's your old life, so this is what it is now.
But it also shows how strong they are. Like
Yes.
it's like they are strong.
Mhm.
They are independent. We're going to march forward. But that doesn't mean that we're not human enough to go,
Yes.
I'm a little homesick.
Mhm.
It would almost be unrealistic for them not to have those thoughts.
Yeah. Um yeah, so that was 11. I liked it, but 12 is probably my favorite. Um
12 is
12
a
and
beast.
13. Yeah, 12 and 13 I think are probably my favorite ones. But yeah, let's get into to chapter 12. One thing that I did enjoy about this chapter is when I was listening to it, they have like this big like council of like his most trusted advisors, and he offers them coffee.
Yes.
I liked that. I was like, oh, okay, they have coffee there. That's cool. That's cool. That is
Space
such like a
coffee.
yeah, exactly. That's what like sometimes like when you read things that I mean this isn't that old of a like 1965 isn't that old for a story, I don't think, but like it is such like a like coffee, that is such like a something that I would imagine would be in a book written in the 60s that's in space.
Yeah, it's like it's almost like if you're like me growing up with like Star Trek: The Next Generation. It's like the idea of it's like the idea of Picard, getting a cup of Earl Grey from the replicator. It's like
Exactly. It's like what I'm saying. Like, of course this would be in it. Yeah. But no, I love that. I was like, okay, that's cool. Like this super futuristic sci-fi book in space dealing with, spice and space drugs and stuff and people with blue eyes and coffee. Cool. Nice.
once again, it contributes to this overall theme I've been talking about. How this is very much a humanizing section
Mm-hmm.
for these characters
Yes.
because you see their struggles and they're not superhuman. They're just
Mm-hmm.
people. Once again, when we've kind of made those funny little Game of Thrones references, like
Yes.
this feels like the House Stark when
Oh my god.
it's like wow, we're so screwed.
Which it is. There's so many striking similarities between this house in the House Stark in Game of Thrones. Like always the underdog, always struggling, always almost getting killed or getting killed. But yeah, I feel like, and that's why I like the House Atreides so much, is because I loved House Stark too. So I'm
Yeah,
always up for the underdog.
you can definitely tell where George R. R. Martin probably got some inspirations. Like
Yeah,
everyone's
yeah,
always building off the soul of the shoulders of the greatness before them, and
yeah. Hey
and
George, finish the
and
book, please. Finish the book. I want
that's
to be
never
done.
that's a pipe dream. Like,
Yeah. Oh goodness. But yeah, what I really also enjoyed, the conversation that the Duke and Paul had about the threat on Paul's life, and how um the Duke is not surprised, I guess, but he's really seeing how much more mature Paul has gotten in the way he handles himself and the way that he like even speaks to his father, because the Duke, they're trying to figure out who could have done this, or who, conspired behind their backs to put the Hunter Seeker in Paul's room and control it and try to kill him. So the Duke brings up Hawat, and Paul is like, no, I don't think it's him, just because he's old. It's not him. And the Duke is like, he said, he was like shocked. He's like, I'm the one that should be like defending him, not you. I thought that was pretty interesting, that interaction that they had.
It's also because it just shows how Paul is like, don't get mad at him. It's like
He's old, leave him alone.
Well, not only that he's old, leave him alone. It's like, I know he's your mentat.
Yeah.
This was sneaky. Like don't give him crap. I mean, like,
yeah,
they really went like super low tech. It was so funny. It was almost like the Harkonnens didn't have enough imagination to come up with something.
Yeah, they took the what did they say? They literally used, like, they did the easy way or something like that, the one that didn't take much thought. And I was like, dang, it's not even a sneak diss, that's a straight up diss.
Yeah, I know, right? Which I think is so interesting that Paul is perceptive enough of that, especially since Howard's also the one that Lady Jessica suspects.
Yes.
And once again, we're starting to see where the manipulation is coming in, especially later on in this section, because there's just so much mistrust being laid that the Harkonnens think they're being smart, but once again, the Duke's not being fooled, and that's why I like the Duke. Like, the Duke is able to be so self-reflective. Like, he's looking at Paul going, you're right, Paul, and I'm proud of you, Paul, for being right and not being as he's almost complimenting Paul on not being so emotional about it as he is, especially after we've seen chapter 11 and seen how much this is emotionally affecting the Duke.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. I feel like the Duke is having a much harsher reaction to the assassination assassination attempt than Paul. Paul is just like, all right, we need to figure out who did this, and the Duke is like still trying to like get over the fact that it happened.
Mm-hmm. And Paul's moving forward to be like,
yeah, like, all right, Dad, let's figure this out. It happened. It's okay. Let's try to pick up the pieces and figure out who did this. And I really like Hawat. I think he's just so sweet. And when he walks in and he's like, it's okay if I have to resign. I understand. And they're like, no, what are you doing? It's fine.
Oh, and the actor they've cast to play Hawat, I don't know his name, but he's he's one of those actors that you're just like, I've seen you in all the things.
Yeah. Let me see. Let's see.
And he's just going to be like that big teddy bear of a character.
Yeah, because he was in the trailer. Oh, Stephen McKinley Henderson.
Oh yeah, and he's just like this big. I mean, he's gonna be like sort of this big grandpa of a guy,
Yeah.
and I think he's going to give that air of authority, but authority that's kind of like, but he is getting old, and it's like,
yes,
are you past your prime? Especially when your job is to be a human computer.
Yeah, exactly. Because he is a mentat, so like he has like specific what's the word I want to use here? A specific job that he needs to like do. And they even recall how many times that he's been off about things. And I don't know what wording they use, but they're like, it's only like they can't even recall how many times because it's so little times.
Yeah, and it's just, and I also love how they are like, we don't need to be hard on him because he's going to be harder on himself than we ever could.
Yeah, I like that. I like, that's what I like about this is like, I feel like that was a humorous moment, and and it's not like a super spelled out humor, but it's like I can picture Oscar Isaac and Timothée Chalamet having like a little like shoulder bump, like, oh, don't be so hard on him, he's gonna beat himself up,
Because what does he do? He immediately walks
he
in
immediately
after this.
says, it's okay if you fire me. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he literally walks in and goes, my lord, he said, speaking to a point over Leto's head. I have just, so he can't even look him in the eye. He's like, he's like
yeah.
he's like pulling himself up. And so he's saying, I have just learned how I failed you. It becomes necessary that I tender my wrist. And Leto's like, shut up, sit down. Come on.
Yeah. We got things to do. It's just shut up. Yeah.
Oh, here it is. Their simple minds came up with a simple trick. We
Yes.
didn't
Oh my
count on
god.
simple tricks. I like
Oof. Yeah,
burn.
that one. Yeah, that is a burn. And it's such like a intelligent burn too. It's like not calling them like flat out dumb. Just like, yo, you had a simple idea and we thought better of you and we
Yeah,
shouldn't
they
have.
even said it was in overestimation,
Yeah.
overestimating the Harkonnens.
Oh man. Which I keep, I'm having like these because we haven't really seen much of the Harkonnens really, other
Except for
than
that one chapter.
yeah, except for that one chapter, and it's like, okay, I'm kind of getting the gist that these guys are just like big dummies, money hungry, big like a big corporation, money hungry, super abusive, just bad.
When you're a hammer, every problem is a nail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and another thing that I liked is how the Duke is like, he says, "Oh, you can raise their wages like 20% from what they were getting paid." And then Gurney's like, "Well, 20% of nothing is still, like not that they weren't getting paid nothing, but pretty close to it." And Gurney's like, "Oh, well, maybe we should give them more." And the Duke is like, "Well, if you think that it's valuable, do it. But if you don't think that's valuable enough, then don't." Which I like how the Duke like gives like freedom to people like Gurney in that respect. Obviously because, he's his right-hand man. But I like that type of leader who isn't just like, "Oh, it's my way or no way." He
Mm-hmm.
gives them like a little bit of wiggle room.
Right. Well, because a good leader knows when to let his lieutenants, like, you gotta let them like spread their wings and like delegate. Like,
Yeah.
do what you think is best, because that's the reason I have you in this position,
Yeah.
because I should trust you to do your job.
Yeah. Um so yeah, after they have that conversation where Hawat's like, "Okay, you're not going to fire me, cool." They call a meeting, a staff meeting, if you will.
Yeah,
Um
it is kind of like a staff meeting.
yeah. It's like it's funny because it's like, oh, this could have just been an email type thing until the very end. Um because he calls in their most like, well, the Duke's most trusted like advisors, and there's a term that they use like pretty much the way people were walking in was like most senior to like newer, like younger guys.
Oh,
What
because
was
there is
they got like
such a
scientists and
yeah,
yeah.
because one thing that is made very clear in these chapters is we live in a world with the Imperium where there is a caste system. You have a
Yes.
class structure, and
Mm-hmm.
there's even a term that's introduced in these chapters that literally is in the glossary that means an Imperium imposed pecking order. It's like I think it's translated as a place for every man and every man in his place.
Ooh, that's epic.
I mean, this is the society that we're living in. It really
Mm-hmm.
is. You're born in this spot. Here's where you are. This is
Yeah.
what you do.
Yeah, and they
Tough
they take that
cookies.
like super serious too, because like, you know, the like certain people even get to walk into a room before other people.
Well,
um,
when it's law, it's like,
yeah,
yeah. I mean, that's how that. I mean, but once again, that's kind of giving you like it continues to give you an idea about how much what we're supposed to feel about the Imperium.
yeah,
Like, this is the way society is structured. So it's like you're just waiting for a revolution,
yeah,
because it's like
exactly.
we gotta shake things up.
hmm Um, oh, I said before the it's a staff meeting that when you're listening or reading the chapter, it's like, okay, this could have just been an email, about like, here's what our profit margin is going to be. Here's our equipment. If
It's all
we
crap.
salvage, yeah, if we salvage half of it, good, but a fourth of it will be lucky, lasts 6 months. So, do what you can with it, I guess, but this is what we need. And they're like, they're only going to make like 6% profit from their spice cultivation.
At the
And
beginning, and they're
yeah, at the beginning.
hoping to get it up to like 15%, because
Yeah.
apparently the Harkonnens were making like a 14%, like on the book, on the books
Yeah.
profit margin.
Yeah.
Because there's also like all this discussion of like the smugglers and how do we let the smugglers still operate as long as they give us a cut,
Mhm.
but let's make sure that we like declare it on our taxes, because in that way it's like there's like all this machinations, like I said, it's like we're going to do these underhanded things that we're going to do
Mhm.
underhanded but above board, because we're not going to give anyone an excuse to come after us, because we're going to do everything in honor of the emperor, so we're on the up and up and nobody can say crap about us.
Exactly. Um but yeah, I mean, they're gonna be making like nothing. And this equipment is just all messed up. And they're trying to like get as many people that have, experience with this because they don't know anything about it. Like, I'm pretty sure in this chapter, or it might be, no, it is in this chapter about how Caladan depended on, what was it, air and sea power. And
Yes.
Arrakis is pretty much the opposite of that. So it's like flipping that coin of, all right, now you knew how to do that, so let's figure out how to do this with shitty resources and no experience. Have fun.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, things that we think like we're accustomed to using are actually going to be disadvantages here, like shields.
Oh
Like,
yeah, about how the Fremen like hate shields. Like they think that they're just laughable.
well, because what do shields do? Apparently, shields attract sandworms.
Yeah, which is so crazy. Of course they do.
Well, not only do they attract sandworms,
It
they
makes
apparently
them pissed off.
right.
Yeah.
So you have an entire society that's like built around the idea of shielding.
Yeah, I mean, their outfits literally have shields built into them that you have to activate. So, yeah, they kind of need their shields. Which is funny because, like, in the trailer, in the first trailer, it shows a sandworm and Zendaya and Timothy Chalamet's characters, and it's like that sandworm looks pretty pissed off. Pretty pissed off. So I'm wondering, did someone use a shield when they weren't supposed to?
I know I
Oh,
know I know things. I can't say
yeah.
anything.
No, you're good.
This is so hard. It's like,
I know, I know.
oh.
It's okay. The movie comes out soon. Um, but
You
yeah,
can
and
read the
then
book
it's like,
faster.
yeah, right. Well, I will say that listening to the audiobook, although I did have to listen to it like 2 times to really retain it, was a lot quicker than my own reading. So I think I'm onto
Really?
something.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm the I can usually read about 2 times faster than an audiobook goes.
Oh wow. Jeez. Yeah, no, I'm not a fast reader. I'm not at all.
Oh
Um,
man.
but yeah, so and then it goes on to say like, will the Spacing Guild, the Chom, the Emperor help out with the issues that they're having? And it's like, no one's really gonna step up and help you guys out. So
No,
have fun.
because once again, they kind of want you to fail in the first
Yeah,
place.
exactly. So have fun.
Yeah. They also are they also come to this realization about how much spice the Harkonnens like processed. They're
Hmm.
like, the Harkonnens aren't going away. They don't want to give this up.
No, yeah.
So then they start talking about the fact that they've got to watch out for saboteurs and traitors and spies. And, and,
Hmm.
and once again, you're already taking a planet that's already a death trap to begin with. And
Hmm.
now it's like you got to watch out for guerrilla tactics and sabotage and all this other stuff. Industrial espionage.
Yeah. Like you name it, and yeah, it's against you in where you're at, dude. So good luck. Um, but again, I think it's interesting we bring up the Harkonnens because they find um what was it, like this like order of Harkonnens that were like pretending to be Fremen.
Yes.
And yeah, this I'm really looking forward to seeing this because the Duke is a straight savage in this part, where he orders Hawat to forge certificates for these Harkonnen, I don't know, bad guys that were pretending to be Fremen, and and wants to turn them out of their families and pretty much everything they own, to show that they're like pledging allegiance, right, to like House Atreides. And like Paul is even like, oh, okay, like I wouldn't have done that, or like he doesn't quite agree with that decision.
Well, and he's also like, we're gonna concoct this plan so that
Mm-hmm.
we can basically, what's the word I'm looking? Basically like repossess all their stuff, and then we're gonna repossess all their stuff, and then pay it as tribute to the emperor once
Mm-hmm.
again, so no one can say boo to us because we're like, oh, here you go, emperor. Like
Yeah.
we're paying our taxes. It's like
Exactly.
it's this giant scheme to pay their taxes so that it's like, once again, we can't give you any outward reason to turn on us. We know you're sneakily working against us,
Yeah.
but we're not going to give anyone else, like, it's once again, it's
No
like,
inclination that we know. Yeah.
right, no inclination that we know. And also we still have like this tentative alliance with these other houses who aren't going to
Mm-hmm.
come to our aid, but they're also not going to turn on us when
Exactly.
when we're not showing any reason to turn on us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then of course, where the meeting takes a total turn, where it should be an in-person meeting and not an email, is when Duncan Idaho shows up, um, with a Fremen named Stilgar.
Who Javier Bardem is playing in the movie.
Yes. Which the description in this
Oh
chapter,
my
when
god,
I'm
like,
reading it, I'm
nailed
like,
it.
oh, okay, that's 100% him. Like it was like, was it like thin lips and like a full black beard, and I'm like, oh, yep, that's. And Duncan Idaho is described as like a darker skinned man with a round face, and I'm like, okay, whoever did the casting for this nailed it.
Yeah, which is really funny considering the conversation we had about how Lady Jessica and Duke Leto don't, like, Oscar
Yeah.
Isaac and Rebecca Ferguson don't match the physical
No.
description in the book at all. It's
No.
like you get to Duncan Idaho and Stilgar, and you're like, okay, well, somebody changed their
Well,
mind.
even Paul is spot on too. So it's
Yes.
like the more we get into more of these characters, which it's crazy. It's chapter 12 and we're just seeing Duncan Idaho, or getting a description of him for the first time.
Yeah, because and it's just amazing to me to watch sort of like what I would almost call like the mutual admiration society that goes
Mhm.
on, because it's like Stilgar thinks the world of Duncan.
Mhm.
Duncan thinks the world of the Fremen, because
Mhm.
Duncan's telling the Duke and his people how the Fremen, they're honorable. We want them on our side. We need to do whatever we can to be allies with them. But then Duncan is like the emissary to the Fremen to say, I pledge my loyalty to House Atreides. What all the honor and trust and faith you have in me,
Mhm.
let me be a proxy of the Atreides to say, trust the House Atreides the way you trust me.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that characterization.
And then there's this. I also think there's like this weird. This is where I think Herbert goes a lot more into the idea of Fremen as an indigenous people.
Mhm. I got
Because,
that vibe too.
oh, right, because you're looking at, I'm trying to think of other instances in, like, just in Earth world history, where once again we do have an interesting take on the idea of colonialism and
Mhm.
imperialism in this book. You know, like I think I've said before, like the idea of Lawrence of Arabia
Yep.
is definitely an inspiration for what Paul will become later on in the book. But here, you've got Duncan as a soldier of the colonialists,
Mm-hmm.
who has not gone native, but has lived among the natives enough that he's earned their respect
Mm-hmm.
and he respects them in turn.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, there's this Chris knife of this Fremen guy who got killed, trying to report on what the Harkinans were doing. And Stilgar's like, you keep the knife. And this is
Mm-hmm.
like this huge big, I mean, it's like this huge big deal. Like, they have traditions and
Yeah, like literally
ceremony.
the rest of the chapter is talking about this Chris knife and the traditions and stuff that they have with it.
Right. And like, no one's allowed to unsheath, like, no
No.
one in this room is allowed to see the knife.
Yeah. Yeah, because we learned from a previous chapter that if you unsheath it, then it has to like
Be
drop,
used.
yeah, be used, like kill someone essentially or whatever. Um, which, when I was like listening to this chapter, I'm like, I know what that is. Don't unsheath it. Don't unsheath it. Um, but yeah, it says Stilgar, warns Leto not to unsheath the blade unless he is willing to follow the customs and traditions of the Fremen. Because once you unsheath it, it has to draw blood.
Yes. But I also love how Leto is like playing the situation
Oh yeah,
perfectly.
he's like, okay, bro, okay,
No,
okay.
but he also says this, sir, I honor and respect the personal dignity of any man who respects my dignity. I
Mm-hmm.
am indeed indebted to you, and I always pay my debts. If it is your custom that this knife remain sheathed here, then it is so ordered by me. And if there is any, which is a very subtle way of expressing his authority in this
Yes,
situation.
yes.
It's like, yes, you're saying don't unsheath the knife, but I want you to understand that these people aren't going to unsheath it because I say so.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Your customs are cool, but yeah,
I'm the dude in charge.
yeah, exactly.
And if there is any other way we may honor the man who died in our service, you have but to name it.
There you go.
I mean, that's a power move.
Yeah, it is for sure. Um, and I like how, like you mentioned, Duncan has that like relationship where he's like an extension of House Atreides, and the Fremen have obviously really instilled like their trust in him, and he trusts them, and there's there's a discussion about is he still gonna like remain with them, which he is. It says it's agreed that Idaho will remain with Stilgar and be welcomed into his I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's the word for a Fremen home. It's the
Siege,
stiche, yeah,
yeah,
something. um so that way Idaho will remain like a dual like alliance between the Atreides family and the Fremen, sort of like an ambassador, which
yes.
I love. I think
Oh,
that's
yeah.
so cool.
Which, by the way, we shouldn't skip over the fact where
He
Stilgar
sp-
like spits.
yeah, he spits
Oh,
on the table, which if you're at first you like hear like he's spitting on his table, but then Idaho, because everyone's getting pissed at it, this guy who just spit on their table. He's like, but you have to remember the importance of water on Arrakis, and just like someone spitting is like, okay, yeah, the act is seen as rude, but on that it's like he literally is giving up
it's
water from his
water.
body. Yeah. um and then doesn't the Duke spit back on the table, or someone spits on the table?
No, no, I don't think anyone
Oh, I
spits.
thought, dang, or maybe I made that
No,
up in my head,
I think
which
you made
would
that
be
up in
cool.
your head. But but I love it how like Leto gets it, but after
Yeah,
Idaho explains it, but it's just so weird to think that spitting is like it's a gift.
yeah,
I
yeah,
have
because like we
gifted
just, if
I
someone
gifted you
spit on my
water,
table, I'd be like, okay, what?
which once again is this great metaphor for how, you know, that's sort of like fish out of water. Like, you need to
Mm-hmm.
understand a person's customs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is like a big flippin' deal.
Yeah.
And once again, I love it how Idaho is there to like translate.
Yes. Yeah. because like I think it's like people were starting to like stand up in Idaho's like, yo, okay, hold on. It's not a bad thing, guys. He's literally sharing his water with us.
But then it's interesting. It's like Stilgar accepts the dual allegiance. He's like, you keep the Chris knife, Idaho. That will be your mark where you're loyal to us.
Mm-hmm.
But in exchange, we're going to let House Atreides keep the dead body of the Fremen,
Mm-hmm.
because now it's like that's an entire body of water
Mm-hmm.
that we are gifting to you, and we're saying you now own this water.
Yeah.
And that's like this huge like this is big. Like this is like a treaty
Yeah.
basically. And it's just like it's so alien, but that's the point, is
Yeah.
how alien this is.
But they still have coffee.
They still have coffee. I still want to know where that water came from.
Yeah, I know. Like how yeah, I agree. Um but yeah, and well, Idaho has to try to get the Fremen to join the Atreides army essentially because there's an attack coming.
Yes, because they want the Chris. I think this is interesting. The Chris knife, because only Fremen are technically allowed to have a Chris knife. The
Mhm.
Chris knife is almost like your passport to get into any kind of Fremen compound. Like if you have a
Mhm.
Chris knife, you must be like you've had all the rights. Like you're like I do swear, like you're like a full blown Fremen. And the idea of like the Harkonnen have put a bounty on a knife,
Mhm.
because if they can have a knife, it's basically like their skeleton key to get into any kind of Fremen stronghold they want. So
Mhm.
then it becomes like you're really starting to see like these dark machinations of the Harkonnen.
Yeah.
It's like we're willing to kill to get a knife so that it can be our get out of jail free card to take out the Fremen from the inside.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because, when we first brought up the Chris knife, I thought how dope it was, and now it's even better.
I know, right? You didn't realize how dope it was when you thought it was dope.
Yeah, exactly. Now it's just super dope. Yeah, and then, the chapter kind of falls off from there. They talk about getting better equipment, and the Duke starts looking for like bases built on Arrakis during the Desert Botanical Testing Station period. It is thought that a man of the Fremen named Liet, how do you
Light.
pronounce
Yeah.
Light, knows, but they decide to ask someone a little more. Dr. What is that? Judge of Change, the planet's ecologist, Dr. Kynes.
Is it Kynes? I thought it
I
was
don't know.
Keynes.
I don't know. Keynes Kynes.
Yeah. Mark that name.
All right, I'm
The
marking it.
ecologist is an important character moving forward.
Okay. Hmm.
So, I mean,
Interesting.
I don't know if it was a spoiler, but yeah, like we. I once again, I also like how Herbert, like, characters who are important to the story get very inauspicious introductions. It's like
Mhm.
your name is like you get mentioned in passing, even though like
You're super important.
you're
Yeah.
super important. Which, by the way, that's a character who's getting gender swapped in the movie.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Hmm. I remember you mentioned that there was a character getting gender swapped, so it's cool to finally know who it is.
Yeah, there's more to that character, but once again, spoilers.
Spoilers. Yeah, no spoilers here. um, but yeah, and then I think it's important to note that Paul kind of notices how his father is now acting.
Mm-hmm.
Seems a little not. I don't know if I want to use the word desperate, but maybe desperate. I don't know.
Well, I think it's interesting, like this right here, and when the meeting just kind of like peters out.
Yeah, fizzles out.
Yeah, and Paul goes, "It ended up in confusion," Paul thought, staring at the backs of the last men to leave, always before, staff had ended on an incisive air. This meeting had just seemed to trickle out, worn down by its own inadequacies, and with an argument to top it off.
Yeah. Wasn't that Paul's like first important council meeting, really?
I think
On
so.
Arrakis? Yeah.
Yeah.
Or in general.
And he says, "My father is desperate. Things aren't going well for us at
Oh,
all."
he did use the word desperate. Yeah.
He
Yeah,
did.
no, that chapter really does show you the position that the house is in on Arrakis, and it doesn't seem favorable at all.
No, I mean, the chapter even starts to end with the idea. Paul even describes his father, saying he's like a caged animal.
Yeah.
Wow, Paul's got some words for his dad.
He does.
But he's also remembering all the Bene Gesserit, and even
Mm-hmm.
like everyone's been telling him this is not going to end well for your dad. Like
Yeah.
it like he's got that knowledge to like just bouncing around in his head. Like everyone's basically saying that his dad's days are numbered.
Yeah. Which I couldn't imagine like sitting through all of this stuff knowing that like, yeah, he's not gonna make it type thing. But like, does he know, like, he doesn't know specifically when it's gonna happen, but like, does he know if it's gonna be like sooner rather than later, or
No, I don't think he does. It's
okay,
just I just remember
he
what the
knows
Reverend.
it's like inevitable?
It's inevitable because that's basically what the Reverend Mother said.
Yeah. Interesting.
All the way back in that first chapter we read.
Chapter 1, yes. Do you have anything else to say about chapter 12 before we go on to the next?
No, it's a beast of a chapter. Like,
it is, and we were saying this before we started recording that like there's a lot of information in it, but it can all just kind of be dwindled down to like, things don't look good, and
yeah,
they're not. Yeah, they're not going to be making a lot of money, and the Chris knife is a lot more important than I thought. And Duncan Idaho is a pretty cool guy.
Yep.
Pretty cool guy.
And we just got introduced to Stilgar finally.
Yeah, finally Stilgar, which is cool because when we did our unboxings, I had no idea who Stilgar was. So like you were telling me how cool of a character he was, and now to finally see it, and like just that introduction where it was like he's like a dark hooded figure standing in the doorway, and like the guards are like pointing their weapons at him, and it's like he's like so unfazed by it.
Mm-hmm.
He's just like, okay.
Yeah. So then we get into chapter 13, which is where we get that meta text from the princess that talks about their first day on Arrakis, which I'm sure in the movie we'll actually see this happen. Like this is one of those things.
I picture it as like a parade.
Yeah. Well, I almost think about like that scene in the trailer where the Duke goes, "Gurney, smile," and he goes, "I am smiling.
I am
smiling." Yeah, I am smiling. That scene is, I think, going to represent this moment.
See, in my head, I was picturing it as like a parade, and
well,
they
no,
were
it is a parade. Like
yeah.
what I'm imagining is like something from like Roman times, where like
Yeah,
the conquering hero returns,
like a stadium. Yeah.
Yeah, and you like walk through the streets,
Yeah.
and then it ends in the stadium, and then you give speeches. Like I'm literally thinking about the first scene of Julius Caesar by William Shakespeare when Caesar arrives back in Rome, and there's like the whole great like we offer him the crown and he denies it 3 times, and like and like just what a big deal you made when a conquering hero came home.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I loved that meta text for this one. And especially because the conversations that take place in this chapter, where the Duke and Hawat are talking about who could have, conspired to do this to Paul, and they, you mentioned how smart, the Duke is with all of this, like, like behind the back, like treachery type stuff, where like he wants you to think that he thinks a certain way, or like he is thinking a certain way. Um, but the blame somehow is getting shifted onto Lady Jessica, or the perception of blame.
Mm-hmm. Which once again is funny because Jessica is suspecting Howard. Howard is suspecting Jessica.
And like they're like Hawa is trying to like convince the Duke that it's Lady Jessica, and the Duke is like, okay, it is Lady Jessica, totally. Um, and then they have like a conversation where where uh she's gonna have a babysitter.
Yes.
And it's gonna be Duncan. Which is like, it's cool that the Duke puts so much trust into these guys, but it's like, dang, dude, are you maybe wearing them a little thin?
Yeah. Yeah. It's this is where you kind of start to see like the holes, the cracks in the armor,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like, guys, you really are stretching yourself thin. Like this is way too much going on.
Like, you have to be an ambassador for the Fremen and House Atreides and have this really dope crysknife now, and also, try to convince the Fremen to join the Atreides army for the, upcoming, like, war or battle that's going to happen. And then also, you have to babysit a Bene Gesserit, so have fun.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, Paul is not in this conversation yet. He's going to show up,
Yes.
chapter 14 is a super short chapter
Yes.
and just kind of wraps this up. But it's just this weird thing where it's like how it's like he's just so on edge now because of the assassination attempt
Yeah.
that he's willing to, he's going to get spooked by anything at this point. And Leto's like, calm down. The Harkonnens are doing this because wouldn't it just be like the most badass way of psychological warfare to make me suspect my own concubine
Mm-hmm.
of even trying to kill her own son? Like that's just ridiculous upon ridiculous. But
Mm-hmm.
how it's like, but wouldn't that just be like the most? And once again, it's the idea that how it's like overestimating what the Harkonnens, are truly
Yeah.
capable of.
Yeah. Yeah, what I like is that, the Duke doesn't agree with Hawat, but he is like, I'm just gonna let him think that I agree with him. Um, because, all of these plans that he's coming up with, and then because he wants like the real traitor to like maybe slip up and then, be known as the traitor. Because then like the next chapter, which I feel like we could probably discuss these two chapters together because they're so short
They are
and
so
they
short, and they
consist of like the same thing.
right. Well, they just bleed into each other. Like literally, all
Yeah.
four of these chapters are basically the same scene,
So yeah.
just stretched out.
Um, but at the end of this chapter, the Duke is watching the sunrise over Arrakis, and I just think that it's such like a beautiful moment where he's like, oh, maybe Arrakis, could kind of grow on me type thing. Um, but then, he sees like he looks out and sees like all of this like destruction from the planet just from harvesting water, and it like tramples all of the like the foliage and stuff, and just he sees how like disgusting the planet actually is, or he's like, you know what, on second thought, never mind.
Well, it's the idea that like he looks at the dew gatherers, and it's like,
Yeah.
wow, water is so sparse on this planet. We collect the dew.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. At the cost of like what makes the planet beautiful, like all like the flowers that he was talking about, like, oh yeah, they were pretty, but then they just get trampled because we harvest every last drop of water on this planet.
It's
It's like sacrificing beauty for like survival.
which is also kind of also dovetails into some of Herbert's environmentalism that
Yeah.
we've discussed before, which I think is really interesting. But then when we launch into chapter 14, the Duke is like straight up with Paul. Listen,
Mhm.
I'm going to do this awful thing. I'm going to pretend like I believe that Lady Jessica is a traitor. And I'm not
Mhm.
going to tell her because I need her reactions to be
Yeah.
genuine. So the Harkinans believe that their crap is working.
Mhm. Yeah, and I I really enjoy how, the Duke tells Paul the truth because if something were to happen, he wants her to know the truth. And
Yes.
he wants Paul to be the one to tell her the truth, which, kind of makes me feel like he's like the Duke is going to like die or something before Lady Jessica like can know the truth from him, from the Duke himself. Um which kind of makes me sad because I do, you know, I was feeling a type of way about their relationship in the beginning because I was only seeing, like the one side of it. But their relationship definitely is growing on me. And I feel like it's about to go sour before we really got to see much of it.
Yeah, but that's also kind of the tragedy of the
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
But and I also love how the whole propaganda um, ministry thing kind of comes up again. It's like, how
Mhm.
will the people know what a great leader I am unless I tell them?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I don't remember if it was in this chapter or chapter 11 where he says what makes a great like an aspect of being a great leader is like confidence.
Yes.
I really enjoyed that line. I think it was like from the very first chapter. But, I feel like those are like key moments that Paul is picking up on because like, in the trailer where he says that line about what if I'm not what how does it go again? The future of House Atreides or
Dad, what if I'm not the future of House Atreides?
yeah.
Even if that were true, you'll still be the one thing I ever need you to be, my son.
Yeah, so good. But I feel like Paul is seeing like how great of a leader or perceived or the perception of being a great leader from his dad, and he doesn't really know if like he can like really be that because his dad does it so well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he is literal propaganda man.
Which
I
is
love that. I love
yeah.
that. It's
Well,
like
and
TMZ, but like in a good way, maybe.
and then I love how we end on a great little cliffhanger because I think we're gonna meet Keynes like in the next chapter. Like
Oh,
they've
cool.
kind of sent for him,
Mhm.
and then that's where the chapter leaves off.
Yeah, well, and, I like how the Duke also like explains to Paul why he never married Lady Jessica in this chapter, and Paul just thinks his like dad is just kind of like tired, just like worn out of all of this like leading and mischief, and I mean it's got to weigh on someone.
Yes, very much so. But I think it's also like it kind of reinforces kind of what he's been told, which is his dad's time is up.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. I mean, like you said, sorry, like you said in the beginning, we always pick like the perfect chunk of chapters. Cuz yeah, like these four chapters were basically like one super long stretched out scene where it was like it just flowed so well. And then at the end, you know, Paul is just coming to that realization to where it's like, yeah, my dad's tired, his time is coming type thing. Like, and I never get the sense of like Paul seems like a very emotionalist person.
Hmm.
Like I'm not getting much of like nervousness or anything from him. Like if I knew like that I had this, terrible purpose or however he says it, um and that my dad is going to die and it's going to be this horrible thing and like there's people trying to kill me and stuff, I would be acting a certain type of way, and he just goes with the flow.
Really think it's that Bene Gesserit training in there.
Yes, yeah.
So
Which amazing.
yeah. Which, by the way, speaking of which, I'm glad to see that show on HBO Max is still a go, because that's going to be an awesome TV show.
Me too. Yeah. When I saw that it was still happening, I was like, thank God, because it's cool. Because I was telling my friends at work that we do like this little book club, and they're like, oh, so where are you at? And I was like, oh, and I'm very new to like the whole Dune world, obviously. And I was like, oh, we're going to chapter 14 tonight. And they're like, oh, so you're on the first book. I'm like, yeah, we're on the first book. And he's like, yeah, you got a lot to go through. And then when his son takes over, his son does a great job, but yeah, his son takes over and blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, holy shit, we got a lot to go. But I love it. And, the audiobook, I think, really just adds another layer to it as well, of like getting that, like reading it, but also like getting the emotion behind certain lines, or even like the pronunciation is different. Like I told you, like like we were pronouncing it Dr. Yu, and they pronounce it Dr. Yui, and I'm like, oh, okay. But it's cool. I'm enjoying it for sure.
Well, I'm so glad that we got to do this again. It's been too long.
Yes, sir. Okay, well, you can tell everyone where they can find you at.
Well, of course, you can find me on Twitter at ScottDC27. You can find my podcast, the DC Film Squadcast, wherever podcasts can be found. We're on Vero, Facebook, YouTube, and you can find the entire network of shows at squadcastmedia.com.
And I will leave all of that listed below, so you don't have to, type all of that in. You can just click on the link. You can find me at WonderMeg pretty much everywhere. So thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you guys like the new setup we got here. Hopefully it makes it a little bit easier to listen to. And we will see you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.